and why is it important for you personally? And as well as what is the one thing that the world needs to hear right now from your findings?
Oh, yeah. All right. Hello. You can go to the next slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Miller. I'm a PhD student at Colorado School of Mines in the US, and I'm a paleoglaciologist and isotope geochemist. So I use isotopes to think about what glaciers and ice sheets were doing before the observational record. But I wasn't always a paleoglaciologist. When I was a kid, I had dreams of being a zoologist and a marine biologist. And I grew up in the outdoors. The outdoors were a super special place for me. So I knew at some point in the future, I would love to have a career centered around them. But it took me quite a while to find cryospheric science. You can go to the next slide. And it wasn't really until I took a trip to Iceland when I was 18 years old. I grew up in Kansas, very flat, mostly fields and agriculture. So I'd never seen a glacier before. And I remember very vividly, I saw my first glacier. And as you were walking along the path up towards the glacier front, there was these markers that had years on them. And it would go from 1980 to 1970, kind of showing where the margins of the glacier was at these past points in history. And for me, as someone that didn't grow up around an ocean, climate change was something that was very hard to sort of conceptualize in my mind and find tangible. And seeing a glacier system for the first time, it was sort of this click in my brain of, wow, this is a really cool way to show how these systems are changing. And it's a really powerful storytelling tool. So since then, I've gotten to dive into this world of the cryosphere and have a lot of exciting opportunities teaching in Alaska, living in Greenland for a few months, and my PhD itself is really focused on Antarctica. So my career has slowly moved in that direction, but I'm very grateful that this was sort of the tipping point for me in helping me find what makes me passionate and how my voice can contribute to a lot of the conversations that are happening here at COP. And so to talk a little bit about my research, I think about waters and water on top of and underneath these glaciers and ice sheet systems. So a lot of us have probably seen wonderful photos like this of superglacial lakes. This is a superglacial lake on the Juneau ice field in Alaska. And this lake filled up over a 2-week period and it drained over 2 to 3 days. So a ton of water is continually moving around in these systems, being routed to the base and moving elsewhere in these glaciated places. And while the superficial features are really, really cool, I'm really thinking about what happens when it actually moves underneath the ice sheet. And water at the base of a glacier can sort of act as a lubricant. It can make them move faster and thus flow into the oceans a lot quicker than maybe we would have expected, and thus contribute to sea level rise. So it's really important to understand these components of the hydrologic system of glaciers that we can't always see, that there's not a pretty photo to capture. So I'm trying to talk more about the systems that are part of the cryosphere that are a little bit more hidden, but equally as interesting. So while there's lots of cool photos I can show from being in the field, a lot of the time I'm in the lab. So we go to these amazing places, we get to collect amazing data, take amazing pictures, but there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes in actually processing these samples and turning that into tangible findings that we can use here in these conversations at COP. So this is a photo of me on a science expedition this past May, working in the geochemistry container. And I was on a project where we drilled into an aquifer off the coast of Nantucket that we think was emplaced by a big ice sheet about 20,000 years ago, trying to figure out how old it is and how it got there. So I got to spend a lot of time in this little box thinking about the ages of these waters. And I also get to pick apart sediment cores every once in a while. So it's not only getting to be in the field and see these beautiful places, but also the work that goes into this behind the scenes that is the actual real meat of the science. And then I'll just conclude by saying the polar world is fantastic. I think there's so many opportunities to get involved and so many perspectives and voices that we're still missing. So a big part of my focus too is outreach and education. As I mentioned in the beginning, I've done some teaching on the Juneau ice field in Alaska, and it's really amazing to get to bring students to these places that likewise maybe have never seen a glacier before and are getting to make those real and tangible real world connections. I've also gotten to work with a lot of other polar early career researchers and draft up some opinion pieces about what we want from this community and what we want as we head into the next International Polar Year in 2032. Yeah, that was kind of an amalgamation of how I'm here today, but I'm very passionate about this space and the people, and I think it's for everyone, and we always need more perspectives. So yeah, I'm happy to chat, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ailey. It was very inspiring, yes. So, Joseph, floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Josep Bonsoms. I'm a researcher and teaching fellow at the University of Barcelona. Just finished the PhD. I'm becoming old. But in this presentation, I will show you the adventure of doing science in Greenland. Here you can see several photos of the expedition that we have done in Western Greenland. And there was a big team from the University of Barcelona, other colleagues from the National Research Center of Spain, and from the University of Valladolid, and from the University of Madrid. Next slide, please. So we know that Greenland ice sheet is melting mass at an accelerated pace, especially in the last decades. And here you can see an example with data from satellites from ISAT, which is a kind of satellite that we use a lot for estimate the mass change of the ice sheets. And we know very well that this is happening because now we have satellite data, observational data, and models. But if we want to look at the past, we don't really know how it was the climate and the glaciers in the past. So we have to extend this data using observational data that we can collect in the field, but we have to go there. Next slide, please. So yeah, if we want to monitor the changes in the glaciers in the last years, what we can use is aerial photographs. And here you can see an example of one glacier, the Ujaranak Glacier in West Greenland. And you can see a comparison of an aerial photo of 100 years ago and one recent photo taken from the University of Copenhagen. And you can see that the changes are so clear, and the one photograph is talking by itself. Next slide, please. So yeah, and I will explain you the adventure that we have conducted in Western Greenland for the project of my PhD. We went to Western Greenland in Nuussuaq Peninsula next to Disco Island, and it's a quite remote region in the Arctic. We took, I think, in total 5 planes from Barcelona, Copenhagen, from Copenhagen to Kargersuaq, and then from Kargersuaq to Ilulissat, and from Ilulissat to Umanak. So each time the plane was becoming smaller, and we were going to a more remote region until we finish it moving with a helicopter by the glaciers. And you can see here in this photo of one glacier, of one peripheral glacier, that we can observe different advances of the moraines systems, and we can know that the age of the glaciers in the external part of the moraine are older than the present, so we can monitor the different changes in the glacier length that we have been observing in the last years and thousands of years. Next slide, please. So to arrive to the fieldwork site, there was a long travel, and we have to manage different kind of difficulties that are happening in the Arctic, such as take risk and take prevention of the polar bear. So we finish in the glacier system for 2 or 3 weeks with all the colleagues, and we live there. And then we do expeditions of around 6 hours in the glaciers, collecting rock samples to estimate the age of these moraines that can tell us the latest advances of the moraine system. So with this data that we are collecting from the moraine systems, what we can know is how old was the moraine, so how it was the glacier in the past, and you can see how it was the glacier in the past in this map. In the red points, you can see the external part of the moraines that we can do a geomorphological dating and estimate the age, and we know that these ages are around the Little Ice Age period and during the medieval war period. So during the Holocene. And by monitoring these changes that we are observing in the glaciers, what we can do is to quantify how unprecedented are the current trends of climate change and the future evolution of the glaciers that we can project using models. And here you can see an example of the outputs of one glacial model, the instructed glacial model, where the ice of this part of Western Greenland will disappear towards the end of the century. And what we can do is quantify that this unprecedented loss that we are observing doesn't have precedence in the entire Holocene period. So we can have an idea of the entire geological period when we are running models, and we are combining these models with the field expeditions that we are doing in Greenland. Next slide. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Josep. Laura, please.
Thank you very much. Your stories are so inspiring, so much so that I seem to have forgotten who I am and what I've been doing, but let's see. So please. So my name is Laura Molares. I'm a polar geomicrobiologist, and I was actually born in the Caribbean. I'm from Colombia, the Caribbean region, and I very much did not grow up around snow, around any glaciers. We do have glaciers, but it's not something that we think about often. So it really took me many, many years to get to where I am now and to start appreciating glaciers and the cryosphere as I do now. I didn't grow up thinking about it, but through science and through studying them, I've really become in love with them. And I really understand why we should all be caring about it. We should all think about it no matter where you are, even if your country or your background doesn't really have it around you. So please. So I started coming to the polar regions during my PhD. I am interested mainly in extreme life. So how is life able to survive extreme conditions, and what is more extreme than the polar regions, than glacier surfaces? So the first time I went to the Arctic, I work mainly in Svalbard. It is a small archipelago above Norway. And we travel there by normal plane. But once you get to Longyearbyen, which is the main city, you then have to go to a research station in a tiny plane. And then, oh, sorry, can you go back? Can you go back, please? Back. Yes. So, yes, so can you, one more? Yeah. So this was my first time seeing a glacier up close. And not only was it the first time seeing a glacier, it was my first time understanding the scale of a glacier. I was in this tiny plane. It's only 20 minutes. You fly over West Svalbard and you fly really, really close to the glacier. So you get to see the most amazing views. And it was the time I understood, you know what, I've been studying all these biological systems. And I think on a microbiological scale, I think on a bacterial scale of what the bacteria is doing. But then if you think about how much space they're actually in, everything that they're doing in all of this surface, you really start to understand why it really matters, why we need to think about all of this bacteria. It's not one bacteria, it's 1,000 trillions, is numbers we don't even understand, doing stuff all over this. So that was my first introduction to the Arctic. So now to talk a little bit about my PhD, I mainly study how bacteria travel into the poles and then land on glacier surfaces, and then what they do there. How are they surviving? So I've been traveling around the Arctic. We've also been able to go to the Antarctic Peninsula, and we travel with this air sampler where we collect air samples to understand who is there, who is in the air, who's traveling. And then we also collect snow samples to see who is falling onto these glaciers, both through the air, but also through the position. So as you can see, I've been doing this for almost 3 years. I've become in love with this sampler. It's my best friend. It's always in my backpack. And, you know, we've been doing this, not only myself, of course, my supervisor, my colleagues, and we really, you know, we've taken this thing everywhere, and we're really trying to understand what's going on. Where is this air coming from? And how does it affect the glacier surfaces that it's in? Next. And of course, you know, this is really cool, really beautiful. But as Ellie said as well, most of our time is in the labs. And after collecting all these amazing glaciers, we have to sit for many, many, many hours on the lab and trying to analyze all of this data and what the story this data is actually telling us. So one story that I wanted to tell as well is, so I've been able to go to Svalbard multiple times now at different times of the year. We study the summer, we've studied this spring, as well as the winter. We went last year in the winter around late February, early March, and we went again this year to try to compare the two times. We went for 2 weeks, and the idea was mostly to collect fresh snowfall, because that's what I'm interested in. Now, we had planned sampling every single day for those 2 weeks, expecting snowfall in the Arctic, the high Arctic, one of the closest places, research stations to the North Pole. And what we encountered was what they called a freak warming event. And in places where we were expecting minus 15 degrees, we experienced over 0 degree temperature for most of those days. And what that meant was that a lot of the snow melted. Instead of getting snowfall, we got rain. So the reason I show this picture is because seeing during polar night, because this was before the sun had risen over the horizon, we were seeing water. And you should not see water at this time of the year because it should be frozen. The whole system should be frozen. So this was really difficult for us as scientists because we had planned this very long, extensive, difficult logistically because of all the reasons that we'd already heard, and we couldn't collect the samples that we went to take. So can you pass? So one thing that we decided to do was document this. We realized very little research is being done on winter warming events. We think about how it's affecting the summertime, but we don't think about, in terms of the bacteria, what will happen if during wintertime these bacteria become alive, or start activating, the permafrost started thawing. What is happening with that bacteria? And then if they get frozen again before time, well, how will it affect the summer? So all of this, we started talking. Of course, we couldn't collect the data because we were not planning to do this type of sampling. But we decided that even if we don't have data, it's still important as scientists to talk about what we encounter in the field. So we created this paper, and can you say? And what happened was quite a bit of news were interested on them. So we talked to journalists, we talked to different people that were interested in this story, and it felt really good. It felt good to see that our science was reaching outside of the academic world. And that is exactly what we're doing here. And that is exactly what needs to happen more in the academia, but also for the general public. And lastly, and with that, I just wanted to talk about the importance of outreach. And as someone from Colombia that didn't grow up thinking about the polar regions or glaciers or anything, there's many different things that different people do, but there's one there's this project that's called Antarctic Flags, where you go to different schools and you tell them a little bit about the science that you're going to do. They draw different flags because Antarctica doesn't have an official flag, and we get to take a picture with their flag, and then we bring it back to the school so that they can see that they're actually not that far away from the Arctic or Antarctica, and they actually have the ability to reach those places. So one more. And these are just some of the pictures. This was from a school in Colombia, in Bogota. And it was, for them, it was the first time they were understanding that whatever happens in Antarctica, actually has impact on their country through all of the different reasons that we've explained already in the previous talk. So yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Very inspiring. I just want to propose that in this session, if any one of our guests have any questions to the panelists, please feel free to raise the hand. And I would like to start otherwise with the first question to Eile. The first question will be about the uncertainty in the science profession, because you work in between the research and communication, and within this scientific field, do you ever feel this contradictory between being neutral as a scientist and needing to be really urgent in communicating these scientific findings with the public, with the bigger public? And how do you navigate that, especially here, this place as COP?
Thank you for the question. I think that's really difficult. I think as scientists, we're taught to be neutral and we're taught to think about our results objectively. And I think that's how we create great science. But I also think it should not keep us out of the conversation and conveying the urgency of the results that we're uncovering. I think there should be more training in spaces for early career folks, especially to not only create these results, but know how to communicate them in a way that's truthful and accurate, but also conveys the emotionalness and reality that is the climate story. So it is hard to navigate both worlds, but luckily I think there's a lot more encouragement, especially from early career folks, to share both of these perspectives and realize that we can be objective, but we can also be urgent and convey the crisis that is, I guess, prevalent in our generation especially. So I try to position myself at both, and I think slowly those two paths are sort of converging together. And I'm excited to partake in opportunities like this where you can sort of exercise both sides of your identity as both a scientist and a science communicator.
Thank you very much for your work and for getting out loud. Maybe another question to you, Laura. You already shared a bit on some extra curriculum activity. Do you think that there is enough space in scientific community for that? Or is it still like this going publicly, going into media or to policymakers? Is it still seen as extra work that you do it on your own, or is it included in your research activity?
Hi, thank you. I think that's a wonderful question. I think we, as scientists ourselves, we talk about this a lot. Unfortunately, it still feels like extra work. Most people are not doing it, and not because of a lack of wanting to do it, but because there's not the space, the time. We are trying our best at all times, but we really cannot keep up. But like, for example, coming up to this week, I felt like I had to work extra hard the week before. I feel like I have to work extra hard the week after to make up for the lost time, when in fact, it's not lost time. This is so important. And as Ellie said, it's part of what being a scientist is. And I think it's changing. It's definitely now we're starting to see a change both with our generation, but also in general academia. Some funding opportunities include within the requisites of what you have to do for your project. It includes having outreach programs as well. So there is, people are trying from the inside, trying to change it too, but in my opinion, is quite slow, and it still feels as a PhD student that it's extra work and maybe it won't be seen as important as it is maybe a publication, for example.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's also probably one of the biggest problem in the science communication to the bigger public when the scientists are in situation like this. Joseph, maybe a few words about your motivation and work, because you work with the ice sheets, with permafrost, with glaciers, which are literally melting and disappearing on ice. How do you keep yourself motivated? And how do you keep working on that, knowing that it's disappearing? And what do you wish the next generation will learn from your work?
One of the motivations was also coming here because what's happening in the Arctic has global consequences, and sometimes what we forget about the polar regions, and even for me that I'm from Barcelona, but it have very important links. And I think that sometimes we are very focused on publications and in the academic work that we have to do, of course, but trying to communicate that to the general public and to the society, and trying to understand that what's happening in the mountain areas with the snow has consequences in the downstream areas is one of the reasons why we are here and why we have to continue communicating the science to the society.
Thank you very much again. Maybe I would like to hear from our... Oh, great, you have a question, please.
Thank you. Hello. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I have a question with you all. I would like to introduce first myself. I'm Farhan, and I'm working as a manager UN at National Disaster Management Authority, Pakistan, and I'm representing Pakistan here in the COP. So my question is, from all of you, that uh, I, really appreciate the study and the work you are doing for, for the climate and for the prevention as well. So I would like to highlight the third pole. You know about the third pole, that is the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, and Karakoram, that's pole. So my question is, it spans over, many countries, like almost 8 to 10 countries, and it's spanning over there. And it's a huge, a kind of glacier over there. And there's a lot of, and the same thing is happening over there as well. So the glaciers are melting day by day, and in almost, I think, 1 to 2% on every year. So the melting is increasing out there. So is there any kind of study over there? What is the reason, or is there any kind of, research over there? Anything? Thank you.
Maybe some of you would like to answer this question, especially I know that some of you also participated in expeditions in that regions.
Can you please repeat the last part of the question because I couldn't listen? Sorry.
Okay. I'm just asking about, is there any kind of research or a kind of work planned or, for the third pole, that is the Hindu Kush, Himalaya, Karakoram region, which is which is linking Pakistan, India, Nepal, China, and many other countries in the region. So this is the third pole, and it also have a, very vast glaciers over there, and those glaciers are also melting on yearly basis. On they're increasing on, I think. So is there any kind of research work over there as well?
Yeah. Well, for instance, this year we have been in the International Glacier Preservation event that was organized in Tajikistan. And there are many works from research center of Switzerland, France, that are focused in the third pole, especially because this part of the world has many areas in the surrounding that depend on the water available of these regions of the high mountain area, high mountain Asia. And it's also important because of hydropower generation. I think around 20% of the snow melt water is used for hydropower, but also for agriculture and for all the traditions that the people from this region have in that are related with the cryosphere. So I will say yes, and there are projects and research institutions dedicated just to analyze the changes that we are observing in the glaciers and the adaptations that we can do for these local communities.
I'll also just add that all three of us represent and are volunteering for ICCI, which is the International Climate and Cryosphere Initiative here at COP. And we're over in this row in partnership with Iceland and Chile. And each year that organization publishes a State of the Cryosphere report. So they just launched the most recent version on Thursday of this week. And there's a couple different sections contained within that. They talk about polar oceans, they talk about ice sheets, permafrost, but there's a whole chapter dedicated to mountain glaciers and all of the impacts that we're seeing in regions like the third pole. So I think that's a really nice synthesis of the science that exists, and it's updated every single year. So we're constantly taking into account all of the science that's done from year to year, and it's announced at every COP. So come over after, and we'll give you a copy of the report.
I see another question.
Thank you. Oh, that's a bit loud. Okay. Question to Laura. So 2 years ago, I was in Norway in the polar circle, and we also had this freak incident where the temperatures went from -15 to 10 degrees, and suddenly everything started melting. It was high winter. And I was wondering, seeing as you've experienced this as well, if this is something that you've decided to start tracking, and if the incidence of these events actually is increasing over the years or not.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a really good question. Yes, I mean, my incident wasn't the first. It wasn't the worst either. But it is indeed happening more and more, as we saw. And one thing that was particular is this idea of the temperatures being above 0 degrees, because that's when the environment completely changes, because you start having all these melting events. And I don't remember the exact figure, but of the 29 days of February or 28, more than half were above 0 degrees. So that is a very scary figure. And I think we are not following it, but we need to start following it. That was the point of that paper. We realized we haven't seen many people talking about these events. We forget about the winter because it's cold and it's not that warm if it gets warm. But we need to track them. We need to understand what is happening. And the fact that it wasn't the first time was very shocking to us. We thought, oh, this must be the first time, but it wasn't. So it has happened before and no one talks about it. And what the effect, in our case, what the effects would be for the biological systems in later in that year specifically. So 100%. And that was the point of the paper, to bring awareness, to have more people monitoring what these events are going to be like in the future. Thank you.
I want to ask if there are some educators or media or policymakers in the room who want to share what they need from young scientists to cover, to bridge the knowledge and the action. Or any other questions?
Not really a question, but when you said educator, I'm a professor from University of New South Wales. We met yesterday at my panel. It's incredible. It's wonderful to see we call early career researchers here. I wish there will be more panel like this. But as I'm speaking, I was thinking, you face all these similar challenges for all early career researchers, but I'm sure you face something probably peculiar, more challenging. Has the international conflict affected research in the polar regions? Has the current decline of US leadership in global governance affected you? And also maybe a little bit more reflection on your direct collaboration with indigenous communities on your sites, if you have. I mean, some sites maybe none, but have you encountered polar region indigenous communities? What's your reflection? What's the thing you want to share with educators? Like, I'm the social science side of polar studies, but I didn't understand if you want or not.
Yeah, I can share that I'm from the United States. If you couldn't hear it in my voice already. Of course, there's all these challenges for ECRs, lack of time, lack of resources. Academia is an environment that is not always healthy. But especially in the US right now, I have a lot of peers that have been impacted by funding cuts that have been widespread. And that's really challenging. It makes this work is already really hard to do. And it's really hard to convey the urgency of it. But when you have your government tell you that it is not valued as well, and that they're pulling funding away from these projects, it's really hard to stay motivated in those spaces. So I know a lot of folks that have been impacted, and I think it's a weird time to be a scientist in the US right now, but we're still here and we're doing the work, and we still want to be part of these conversations. So yeah, I'm very lucky to be in this space, and I'm hoping that it'll change for the better in the future. And I think this is also an opportunity for more international collaboration and building stronger connections across the world, because it does really take all of us to make some of this logistically challenging work to happen. But that's what I'll say on that question specifically, and then maybe we can pivot to indigenous knowledge.
As I mentioned, I work in Svalbard, and Svalbard doesn't really have it's one of the places in the Arctic that doesn't really have indigenous communities. So I have been rather unlucky that I haven't been able to share with the indigenous communities of the Arctic. And In all of our conferences that we've been, we work together closely with people that do work in the Canadian Arctic, in Alaska, in Greenland as well. And there, the position that the scientist takes is really help the communities understand why their science is important for them as well, and also to learn from the communities as well as to what their concerns are and how we can help through our science. But unfortunately, in my case, yeah, I haven't been able to, but I would love to. I would love to continue working in places where I can have that socialization as well of the work.
Well, I've been doing the PhD in Greenland, so I've been there to do field work. And something interesting, but also worrying about the Arctic communities is that these populations are not contributing to greenhouse gases emissions, or they contribute very low, but they are facing one of the most important implications of climate change. The Arctic temperature has increased it around 3 or to 4 times faster than the global average. And this is also useful to come here and to see that conversations that we are having between all of the countries in the world, in the north, the south, and to face that sometimes the climate negotiations and the climate change issue topic is not only about climate, it's also about the global governance and how we are contributing to the changes that we are observing between different parts of the world.
Thank you, everyone. Also, thank you very much for this excellent question. Not the easiest one. Do we have any more questions? Or great.
So, Sangha, thank you for your work on retrieving this massive information to inform us on climate change. Did this information transform you into campaigners around you in your family circles, changing things, trying to convince your friends to shift to EVs or whatever? What do you do in your inner circle to maybe to campaign to change the way that humankind is behaving?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's something we always get asked of what do we do and how do we change our individual behaviors? And I think, I mean, there's a lot of things you could add to that list, but I think oftentimes, I think what helps is just a conversation. I think that's a big thing I think about in sort of a science communication space is, okay, I'm talking to this person. What is their perspective? What is the audience? What is their connection to climate? Maybe there's no connection, and sort of starting from wherever they're at. And maybe that's talking about recycling. Maybe that's talking about the cryosphere, but trying to create engagement through things that are interesting and that they have investment in themselves. I think oftentimes we try to tell these climate stories, but they don't often reach the intended audience because there's not that emotional connection here. And this is a very emotional issue. So yeah, I think knowing your audience and being able to tailor your communication appropriately is the most impactful thing. And it doesn't require any crazy amounts of money or a big event like this, but it can be the conversations you're having on your day-to-day in your community to just raise awareness and encourage continued education about a lot of these conversations.
Thank you very much. We will have to close our session soon, yeah, because the another one is just about to come. Thank you very much again for your brilliant stories, the real stories of your life and your science. And these 3 early career scientists, they were volunteering this week at the Cryosphere Pavilion based in Chile there. They definitely will be happy to bring you also over there with the further questions. But now I would like to ask you to do the wrap up of this week, because I know you're soon gonna be leaving. You, Joseph, you're just gonna fly soon to defend your PhD, and your girls also leaving soon. How was it for you here? What about the learnings from COPE? Because for most of you, it was also first time at COPE. What you're gonna bring with you into your research, in your regular life?
the learnings are huge because there's an area of pavilions and you can see other communities and many other parts of the world that you have never been, and that you realize that for instance, the sea level rise of Greenland sheet is impacting to many other places in Africa that they are interested in include the impact of the decrease of the cryosphere in the climate negotiations. And what I can learn from the conference is that sometimes we don't believe in all the changes that we are observing into the political sector. But if we are a little bit optimistic that the current policies can be changed in the future, the small changes that we can do at the national level can have a very important implication for the global evolution of the climate.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love COP. This is my second COP, and I think there's so much knowledge that's shared here, and there's so much knowledge that's learned. I think oftentimes, especially being a student, we are stuck in these boxes of I'm thinking about this really specific question or this really specific place, and it's hard to put that in the context of everything else that's happening in the world and the conversations that are happening here. But it's really nice to step outside of that comfort zone and talk with people from around the world that are thinking about the same things as you, or maybe not, and getting to start that conversation with someone. I love the pavilion setup too, because it prompts a lot of this knowledge exchange. So I'm going back to the US, a place that is not a great place to be in science right now, and feeling refreshed and re-energized to continue doing this work and building in these outlets for outreach and communication, Indigenous knowledge exchange and co-generation. I think, yeah, it's been a really inspiring week, and I think there's a lot more work to be done, but I'm really glad to have this perspective and this experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been an incredibly, there's so much to learn, so much to learn. We've learned, I feel like my life has changed completely from now on. My main takeaway and the thing that I've enjoyed the most is how much people are excited to learn. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way when you're not in these spaces, but everyone that comes up to us and we start telling them the story of the cryosphere, they get really excited. Even countries, you know, a lot of people don't think about these places, and whenever you start telling them, immediately you see an amount of awe, an amount of excitement. Everyone wants to make change here, and that's been really, really special. And as Ellie said, I go back excited to continue doing this work and to continue being in spaces like this when we get to share with the general public as well as policymakers.
Thank you very much for our participants and our guests. So yes, as you see, these early career scientists, they do not only study the cryosphere, they study our future. So let us make sure that they do not only do the science, but they are a big part of our decision making. Thank you.
You like it? Yes. I think of it. Yeah.